Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me is Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80 and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, how are you on this fine Thursday?
I'm awesome. I'm awesome. We're kind of going back in time here because the guest we have on the show today is not many people know. Like I did a podcast with him back before both of us were full time in the industry, I think, and we were both trying to gain momentum. And it was before people I think maybe a couple hundred people listen to this podcast a week, but we did it, and it was so much fun. And to see where we're at now, it's definitely good to talk to him on this podcast. And I wanted to build a little teaser here if you kind of felt that.
I don't know who it is. Who's our guest? Who is it?
It's freaking Jake Ciely.
It's Jake Ciely, noted deli enthusiast Jake Ciely from The Athletic. Find him on Twitter, of course, at AllenKid. Jake, thanks for squeezing us in today. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, although I was wondering the same thing with that intro. I was like, wait, that can't be me. It's
way too much. Way too much.
Podcast.
I mean, legitimately, we had Scott Engel on the other day, and he was like, oh, I read Tags' article, and it's wonderful. And I incorporate, I'm like, too much positivity. Everybody knows that I don't like it. I like to tear people down. But whatever, let's get into it. It's our DFS show. So our usual DFS show plan, we're going to start with your favorite Pricey or cash game play at each position. We'll discuss a couple of cash game value plays at each position. We'll do one GPP gamble at each position, a quick discussion of a defense you guys like, and then your stack of the week and your lock of the week. But before we get into it, it's our DFS show. That is a good reminder that you should be using our DFS optimizer over at fantasypros.com/optimizer. Saves you hours of research, lets you tweak your lineup as much as you want, like locking and excluding players to create your own custom player pool. It uses projections that are constantly being updated, or you can import your own custom projections. You can generate up to 150 lineups at a time with our multi-lineup generator. Again, that is at fantasypros.com/optimizer. All right, let's get right into it. Favorite pricier cash game play of the weekend. Let's start with you, Jake. Who do you have?
It's kind of, there's some obvious names up there, with the Kamara and Cook, but he's pricey, and he's pricier than he's been in some time. So I'm going to drop down a tier. I'll let you guys maybe potentially take that group, but I think I'm going to pay up, quote unquote, for Mike Davis at 6,800. That feels pricey to me because it feels pricey in general anytime to get close to 7,000. So maybe I'm straddling the line a little bit, but I will take Mike Davis because he's going against Detroit. A lot of people are annoyed after what's happened for previous weeks before Christian McCaffrey came back, so they're hesitant to go back to him, even though the backfield is now his again. But the appeal of Davis before this was that he's getting the Christian McCaffrey work, like it's the passing game too. And it's Detroit. It's the best matchup on the slate. So I know it's not Kamara and Cook and Henry. It's just once you start talking 8,000 plus at running back, you just hamper so much the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, Tags, what do you think about that? That's a $1,200 discount from Henry and much more than that when you get to Kamara. How do you feel about it?
I'm definitely down with Davis this week. He wasn't in my pricier one, but I like that Jake went down here because I was going to bring up that I don't necessarily love any of the running backs that are expensive this week. And Jake, you were saying you could leave it to us, but I mean, at what point are we going to start to say that Dalvin Cook might have a little Derrick Henry to his projections? And I say that, and I understand people listening are like, what? He's a 3-down back, right? Dalvin Cook has 5 more targets than Derrick Henry does in the season. He's not being targeted a whole lot in the passing game. He has just 9 more receptions, 102 more yards, so it's not like it's a big thing. I know Dalvin Cook missed 1 game in there, but still, he's not getting the reason that we pay up for guys like Christian McCaffrey is because he's being so targeted in the passing game, and if the game script were to go negative, we love that. Dalvin Cook, I like Dalvin Cook this week. There's a lot of reasons to like him in terms of what he should do on the ground against the Cowboys. But guys, he's coming off a 30 carry week where he ran into a brick wall over and over and over again. And not just that, but he only has 5 days in between games when players usually have 6. So I'm a little bit worried about paying up for Dalvin Cook this week. I'm not going to lie. So I like going down into this range. I don't know if I'm going to pay up for a running back this week.
Well, I mean, that's fair. He had 34 touches, certainly. But, I mean, he's coming off, games where this is just what he gets. He got 32 touches a couple of weeks ago and 24 last week. Do you think they're going to ease him up a little bit against Dallas? Tags?
Not to say ease him up, but I mean, he could just be beaten. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to it. Did you guys ever hear the Arian Foster interview on Joe Rogan's podcast?
I didn't know.
So I highly recommend going back to listen to it because Arian Foster kind of brings you through the journey of an NFL running back and what they go through the days after a game, especially when you go up in a game that's hard fought and he's like, you touch the ball 30 times per game in that game and then you get down. He's like 2 days later, it's like you're peeing blood. Like you just take a physical beating. So Dalvin Cook, I mean, he has been getting tons of work, so it's really hard to get away from him. But at 9K, I mean, that's a lot. That's Christian McCaffrey territory, and he just doesn't get the passing down work that McCaffrey does. So I'm not saying Cook's a bad play. So if you're listening thinking, oh, Tags, this is a terrible take, I don't think he's a bad play, but I'm a little worried about him when you're paying that much because you need this year, it's around 3x is what you're looking to get. So you need Dalvin Cook to score basically 27 PPR points in this game with limited passing down work.
Yeah, bench Dalvin Cook. You can hear Tags. That's just the big takeaway you want from this one. On FanDuel, I mean, Cook is 10,500. Like, that's crazy at this point. Wow. So I agree. And yeah, I agree with you, Jake, that really when you're looking at the very expensive options here at running back, there's just nobody that you really want to go after at this point with that. So I think pivoting to Mike Davis is a good idea, especially in this matchup with Detroit. And I agree that some people are probably like, I'm done with Mike Davis. He had that great run, right? And then it's been like, oh, I'm just disappointed now in the last few games. Like, whatever, suck it up. It's a great matchup. Mike Davis is the guy I agree for cash. All right, go to wide receiver, Jake. Favorite price here, cash game play of the day.
Is it just always Davante Adams at this point? So I'm also not going to go to the obvious one here. My favorite pricier one, honestly, this is another it's not quite that level, but you can tell me if I'm crazy, but it's a 6,900. So he's almost 7,000. He's he's sixth on the board. So that's still high level. It's Terry McLaurin against Cincinnati. And it's Terry McLaurin that just love him every single week. I don't know how everybody doesn't love him every single week when he has bad matchups like James Bradbury. Guess what? The Washington team gets him away from the tough matchup because they're going to move him around and target the living hell out of him. And they're even targeting him more because Alex Smith is throwing all of a sudden more than he has in his entire career. So I don't understand. Put it this way. It's not why people don't like him because I think everybody does. I don't understand why DraftKings doesn't like him because why is Terry McLaurin not in the $7,000 range at this point?
Tags, Terry McLaurin, go.
I miss the days when we had Terry McLaurin in the 5K range. I really do. That was an easy play every single week. 6,900. I was looking at McLaurin, and I like him. I just don't like him as much as Keenan Allen. And if you go up $500 to get up to Keenan Allen, that's probably where I'd go in the expensive range. McLaurin, the only thing that you worry about with him is that they obviously don't score a whole lot of points with Washington. The Bengals matchup is an easy one. So there have been 12 wide receivers who have totaled at least 69 yards against the Bengals, including 11 of them who have had 15 plus PPR points. So again, I don't hate McLaurin at all. I actually like him. It's just trying to figure out who you're going to play in that price range. I'd probably rather go up to Keenan Allen, who's averaging over 10 targets per game. With Justin Herbert under center, you're going against that Jets defense that has already been terrible, and now they cut Pierre Desir, who was bad. I know he led the team in interceptions. Who gives a crap? He led the team in interceptions, but they cut him midweek, so that means they're going to be moving to rookie Bryce Hall, or they're going to go to Corey Ballentine, who Jake would know was terrible with the Giants. So
yeah, if you get cut from the Giants.
Exactly. So I do like Keenan Allen quite a bit this week. I'm going to play him everywhere.
Real quick, Tags, I actually overlooked Allen because I would make Terry McLaurin 7th in price because I have Allen in my flex because he's the 4:00 game in case I want to pivot off a common option. So It's funny. I'm with you on Allen. I forgot I even had him because he's already in my roster, so he wasn't on the list.
Yeah. So Jake, would you prefer then if you could only choose one, Allen at 74?
I would go
McLaurin
Allen if I could only choose one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's good. You don't ever go wrong picking a receiver against the Jets. I mean, Davante Adams isn't obvious regardless of the matchup.
No, he's not. He might not play this week, by the way. This is like news that some people have missed.
Ankle injury?
There was a Packers a beat reporter basically came out and said that he talked to Davante Adams. He said the plan is to play this week, but I can't say for certain. That's what Davante Adams said. So if Davante Adams is not 100%, especially with an ankle for a guy that relies on his route running, he's not like the most physically gifted wide receiver. He's a route runner. So if that's the case, Xavier Rhodes has been playing better this year. I still thought Adams would crush him in coverage, but if he's not 100%, I feel you don't play these guys in cash.
Well, Here's the other thing on that, Tags, is I was interested to find this, and I came across it on accident because I was looking up Tom Brady under pressure and how poorly he performs. Worse than Tom Brady Aaron Rodgers is bottom 5 this year under pressure, and the Indianapolis Colts, at least over the past couple of weeks, they didn't start off as hot, but top 10 pressure. It's not number 1, and I'm not saying don't play Aaron Rodgers and don't play Davante Adams, but it just might be a little bit of an off game, because if you look at the one worst game for Aaron Rodgers, what was it? Tampa Bay gets a ton of pressure.
Dude,
all right.
No, I kid you not, Jake. I just released the primer this morning. I went through that. Rodgers' opponents this year: the Vikings twice, the Lions, the Saints, the Falcons, the Texans, the Jaguars. The Bucs are the team he struggled against. 160 yards, no touchdowns. This matchup, I don't think the Colts are a dominant defense like the numbers kind of suggest, because they've had some weaker competition, but this is one of the tougher matchups. And again, if Adams is 100%, I'm with you.
Okay. A couple of things before we move forward. Number one, I'm in the first, I think it was the inaugural FSGA sportsbook league where we had to draft prop bets essentially with a fixed budget. And if Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP this year at 25-1, I'm going to win the entire league.
Who told you to do that? Who told you
I don't remember. It wasn't you. It was anybody other than you. It was definitely somebody other than you. Second, we have done this podcast for 10 minutes and we have basically told people, don't start Dalvin Cook, don't start Davante Adams, and don't start Aaron Rodgers. So we need to pick this up a little bit. Let's get to quarterback here. Who's your favorite pricier cash? I know it's not Aaron Rodgers, but who's your favorite pricier cash game play of the week, Jake?
Yeah, it actually isn't Aaron Rodgers. So pricier, we know quarterback's relatively flat performance, but he is pricey-ish. I'm going to go Deshaun Watson, who people I think should just be more on him in general. I'm throwing out some of that game because he lost 2 deep threats to the weather and still had a decent game. It wasn't a complete letdown like we've seen from the Browns and Baker Mayfield when they're in that kind of weather. So Deshaun Watson against the Patriots defense, which is not a defense we're worried about anymore. Even Stephon Gilmore, it's not Stephon Gilmore anymore. He's still worrisome, but okay, what is he going to try to take away Will Fuller or Brandon Cooks for part of the game, who can both get behind him at this point with how he's been playing this year? And then the rest of I'll compare their defense to the Giants. They have Bradbury, but after that, it's just beat up on everybody else anyway. So I like Deshaun Watson a lot this week.
It's funny that you bring him up because I was thinking the same thing, because I think that fantasy managers, and just generally, whether it's DFS or season long, are scared. They still have this incorrect view of what the Patriots defense actually is. And yeah, you throw out last week. Last week doesn't even matter for the Texans at all because the wins were ridiculous. Tags. A, how do you feel about Watson? B, if he is not, who is your favorite price or cash game play?
Yeah, I actually said in my Watson write-up that you're more scared of the Patriots name than you are the actual matchup.
Mm-hmm.
The matchup has actually been extremely good. They're averaging the second most yards per attempt in football, behind only the Jaguars. It is a good matchup. The only concern is lack of plays from the Texans, because the Patriots opponents, basically the Patriots are just eating up the clock. They're running the ball constantly over and over, and they're going to do that against Houston. That's my concern with Watson, is that it's just a low volume game. So I would actually pay up to Lamar Jackson. I know Jackson has not been very good this year in terms as a passer, but he has picked it up over the last 2 weeks, completing 75% of his passes. So if we start seeing shades of what we got last year, and then you take in his rushing totals, because he's rushed for at least 53 yards in 7 of his last 8 games. We know that rushing floor is going to be there no matter what. And then you look at the Titans opponents that have averaged almost 69 plays per game. Opponents have dropped back to pass 61% of the time against them, and that's because their pass rush sucks. 3% of dropbacks have resulted in sacks. That is horrendous. It's like one of the bottom marks in the league. So Lamar Jackson should be able to basically walk back in the pocket, and kind of scan the field as he'd want, and feel comfortable throwing the football this week. So when you add in his rushing floor with the ceiling that you get against the Titans, who they have not allowed a quarterback to throw for fewer than 249 yards since back in week 1. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. I think he's a high floor play. I think he's a high ceiling play. I'm gonna have a lot of Lamar Jackson this week.
That's interesting. Jake, how do you feel about Lamar Jackson, who is the most expensive quarterback, right, on this slate? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about him, Jake?
In seasonal, I feel great because the playoff schedule is terrific. So if you're hoping to get vintage, quote unquote, vintage Lamar Jackson, DFS, I understand the upside. He always this year feels more of a tournament than a cash play, because honestly, for the price that he's been around, high 6, low 7, he's been hovering around this price despite him having a down season compared to last year, because he's Lamar Jackson, and everything Mike said is correct. But to get what you need from Lamar Jackson, now you need a Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson type of game where it's 35, potentially even 40 points for it to really pay off. So I understand if you're going high price why you would go there, Mike. I've been very hesitant to use him outside of the tournament option.
See, it feels like to me that Herbert tags at
Yeah.
$500 cheaper would be a better option than Jackson. And he was my guy. So why do you prefer Jackson at 73 versus Herbert at 68?
I was actually going to bring up Herbert as someone, like, if you needed to save $500, like you're trying to get up from Terry McLaurin up to Keenan Allen, then, you have to find some savings somewhere. And if you want to go to Herbert, I have zero issue with that. Herbert is coming off his worst game of the season, to be fair. He also cut his hair. I don't like that.
With Samson, he lost his power.
But no, seriously, the Jets matchup, I don't think anybody can, be mad about it. So I have no issue with Herbert at all. I just feel like I think you're getting the floor with both Herbert and Jackson. I just feel like the ceiling is higher with Jackson because there is zero competition for Justin Herbert. Like, in terms of, like, with the Jets are not going to score points. They just don't do that. So it's a game where they can very easily just take their foot off the throttle, and that can really hurt the ceiling. And we've talked about this though, Dan, where, this year to finish as a top 15 fantasy quarterback, you have to score like 20 fantasy points, which is just stupid. So you need that ceiling. And that's the only thing that I'm worried about. So in cash lineups, to pay an extra $500 to get the ceiling of Jackson, that's why I'm willing to go there.
All right. Tight end then. Who's your favorite pricier cash game play of the weekend, Jake?
There's no such thing anymore.
That's the correct answer, actually. Yes, that's right.
Like, look, we don't even have a 5K because Mark Andrews has been so disappointing this year.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going up to this level, if I'm going into the 4K range, it's very hard to like most outside of Hawkinson. Though he's not the highest, but I just don't. Hawkinson's dealing with the injuries. Sounds like he should be okay, but against Carolina, I'm just going to. Hawkinson's been top 3 all of a sudden. What we kind of really wanted from him and to be a breakout year. I still do like Andrews because I know any given week Andrews can put up 20 points. He's turned into Amari Cooper before Dak Prescott was there. He's the Amari Cooper of you might get 25, you might get 5. So I see Mark Andrews, but because of his inconsistency, he feels more tournament. I feel like Hawkinson's just the obvious name in the 4K range.
Does it matter to you, Jake, whether or not Galladay plays? Because I did see that he practiced yesterday.
No, because the interesting thing was that Hawkinson's volume is only barely different with and without Galladay. It early in the season, it was about what Hawkinson's always been. When he came back, Hawkinson didn't really lose anything, and when he's been back out, it upticked a little bit this time, but not so much that it's Hawkinson's just been Hawkinson for most of the year.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tags, how about you? Who's your favorite pricier cash game play?
Mark Andrews. I talked about Lamar Jackson, why I like him. The matchup against the Titans has been so good. On average, the Titans are allowing 18.6% more fantasy points than their opponent's average in non-Titans games against them, which tells you about the strength of schedule and who they've played so far. They've also seen a league-high 18 targets in the red zone to tight ends, so it's clear that teams are favoring their tight ends in that area of the field. Marquise Brown is just whatever. But Mark Andrews last week, I feel a little bit more confident in paying for him. Not only is his price suppressed, like if he was like, 5,800, I might be like, that's too much risk for cash, but 4,900 is not bad. Knowing that he came off a game against the Patriots defense that was number 2 in the league. He totaled 7 catches for 61 yards. Again, like I said, Lamar Jackson has completed 75% of his passes over the last 2 weeks. And I mean, I don't want to say they were tough matchups. Indianapolis was a tough matchup. But New England, it's not as tough as everybody makes it out to be. But again, the Titans, not tough at all. So I like Andrews a lot. And when you add in the fact that Nick Boyle is now out for the season, it could clear up another 1 or 2 targets per game to Andrews. So I'm paying for him at 49.
I think I could live with it at 49 on DraftKings, not at 65 on FanDuel. There's just no way. I'm not paying. I don't know what I'm going to do at 10, frankly, on FanDuel in cash games, but it will be a cheap position for me, as cheap as I can go. All right, before we keep going, guys, if you've been listening to this show for a while, then you know that I am from New York City and I now live in New Hampshire. It's a little different. I mean, a little quieter. When I say the word Subway, people here think I mean the place where you eat sandwiches and not the E-train that I used to take into work every day. But truthfully, the biggest difference is the food. It's just not the same. My wife and I love steak. That used to be our jam, a good steakhouse. No joke, we made the decision for me to come work for FantasyPros over a giant steak dinner at Peter Luger's, and there's just not the same type of places here. And it bugged me for at least the first couple of years that we lived here, because then my mother, whose sole goal in life is to buy me and my wife things that we don't really need, but which she knows we'll enjoy, sent us a package from Omaha Steaks. Just trust me, she said. And when you have 2 young kids, and you are desperate for a good meal, and your mother sends you a giant package of world-class steaks, burgers, and chops, suddenly you can deal with no longer living in New York City. So now every so often my doorbell rings. Out on the porch is a big cooler filled with dry ice and perfectly aged 100% American grain finished steaks. Yes, I make sure we order some burgers for the kids, but yeah, we don't miss those steakhouses anymore or the crowded grocery stores. And if my wife ever wants to talk about her new job, well, we'll talk about it over steak, but at our dining room table while eating one of the perfect cuts of meat from Omaha Steaks. And look, the holidays are coming up, guys. I know what my mother is sending us. I know what I'm sending myself. It's the Deluxe Grillers Assortment from Omaha Steaks. It contains an awesome variety of entrees, sides, and desserts. And by the way, if you go to omahasteaks.com, type the code FantasyPros in the search bar, you will also get 4 free burgers and a free digital meat thermometer. I'm not kidding, guys. My mother is listening to this right now. I guarantee it. She will confirm. I say this all the time. That first package of Omaha Steaks that she sent us has gone down as the best gift that we have ever gotten. You do not have to believe me, okay? Try it for yourself. It's backed by their unconditional 100% money-back guarantee. Deliver the perfect gift or send yourself something special. Get Omaha Steaks delivered right to your doorstep. Go to omahasteaks.com, type Fantasy Pros in the search bar to shop the best gourmet gifts of the season. Again, that's omahasteaks.com, type in Fantasy Pros in the search bar. Let's go to cash game value plays here. Let's start at running back. Jake, start us off.
Yeah, I think the obvious one is, if no Joe Mixon, which it sounds like, Giovanni Bernard back into the mix. But look, I hate to trust him. But at this point, I think we can maybe cross your fingers. But Matt Patricia is seemingly woken up and got and DeAndre Swift. Look, you know, I'll do a victory lap on this one for sure. And I'm sure you guys probably said the same thing. But I said this preseason he was going to be this year's Miles Sanders. If you were just patient and didn't drop him or went and bought from somebody else on the cheap, it's finally happened. And Patricia's got his head out of you-know-where. And it's an amazing matchup. So I think that Gio and Swift are just the obvious ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Swift tagged. Swift is definitely on your list, right?
Oh, he's definitely on my list. And the thing is, I've struggled with this, right? Because, you know, Jake already mentioned Mike Davis. These two are playing each other. So that typically has negative correlation. But fortunately, both running backs are involved in the passing game. There have been 8 running backs this year who have seen more than 13 touches against the Panthers. 6 of those 8 have scored at least 22.8 PPR points. The only 2 who didn't were David Montgomery, and, well, he never does, and Todd Gurley, who, well, he didn't score a touchdown, so Todd Gurley sucks in a game he doesn't score a touchdown. But he actually may have scored in that game. He only had 46 yards. But DeAndre Swift, the way he looked last week, he looked like a running back that had fresh legs against a defense that was wearing down. That's basically what it looked like. So at 6,400, I'm down to trust him at that price because, again, you do have to worry about Patricia pulling Matt Patricia-like things.
I don't think so anymore. I mean, maybe it's possible, but you can't have that game. You can't be like, we're going to turn this guy loose. Right. He's going to get the starter's workload. Here's 43 snaps. Okay, good job. Now you're on. Now Adrian Peterson is leading the way. Like, you just can't. Even Matt Patricia can't do that. But
I'm with you. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I like Swift. It was just going back and forth between him and Davis. So, Jake, if you had to break it down, like let's say you had to pick one of them because you didn't want the negative game correlation, who would you pick between Swift and Mike Davis?
Mike Davis. It's just because, let me ask you guys this. Would you be shocked? I know be surprised. Not like legitimately shocked if we came around 4:00 and all of a sudden it was like, oh, Adrian Peterson got 18 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown.
Yes, I'm calling it yes. All right. I want, well, you know, forget it. I would like to revise my previous answer. No, not shocked. I'd be surprised, but yeah, I get it.
4:15. And everybody's going to be like, see, it happened to us again.
Never trust fair. Patricia.
Tags, what about Gio if Mixon is out? Which, again, it does sound like, and this is the most mysterious foot injury I've ever seen. I get that foot injuries are fine, but legitimately you go from, I think he's probably going to be fine this week. I mean, he came back in after that injury, and we see him dancing on the sidelines to 0 updates, and he's now, it might be 5 weeks later where it's like, sorry, he's not ready to practice. But, Tags, how do you feel about Gio if indeed Mixon sits?
I don't know. I'm a little worried. Another low volume game. Washington's opponents 61 plays per game. DeAndre Swift last week was actually the first running back this year who has totaled more than 3 receptions or 30 yards through the air against Washington. And that's where Bernard makes most of his value. You're not playing him to get what he does on the ground. And then you have to worry about the Bengals, including Travion Williams and Samaje Perine last week. Again, we talked about this in the Start Sit show, where we don't know if it had something to do with the fact that they kind of just fell behind in that game and they were trying to just share some of the workload so they didn't put a lot of miles on Bernard. I don't know, but I think it adds a level of risk that I'm not willing to take in cash games.
So then take the obvious name I left you on the other side of that matchup.
Well, I mean, dude, so Antonio Gibson at 5,800, he's definitely there.
Oh, I was going to say McKissick because he's getting 1 billion targets a game.
I think at some point Washington has to be like, guys, like, can we stop doing this? Because if you look at like weighted volume, JD McKissick should be like the number 1 play on the board this week in terms of what he's priced at. But
he's 52.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, getting 14 targets or whatever it was, like that's ridiculous in a PPR format. But Alex Smith, he should not be under as much duress this week against the Bengals. They don't have a nasty pass rush, so they should push the ball a little bit more downfield this game. Antonio Gibson at 5,800, I like because I feel like it could be a DeAndre Swift situation where they eventually just turn to him because he is the playmaker on that team. That dude is just better than JD McKissick. I don't really care about the targets. He's the better player, but you're paying a little bit more from Duke Johnson at 5,400 is a decent play. But again, it comes back to that volume stuff. So I might be with Jake here and just go, you know what? I'm just going to play DeAndre Swift and Mike Davis, and I'm going to live with it.
Okay. I think that's the right call. I mean, there's certainly Swift without question. All right. Is there anybody else that we haven't talked about here for a cash game value play? Tags anybody? Because I let Jake go first. Any other cash game value plays?
Is Ahmed a play at 4,800?
I think Breida coming back.
You really think Breida's going to factor in that heavily, Jake?
Heavily enough. I don't think Breida is going to take the lead, but if you're telling me Breida even got 35% of the touches, that has me concerned.
Okay. All right. I guess that's fair. But I will say, even though this is a DFS show, that Brian Flores did come out today and declined to put a timetable on Myles Gaskin. So everybody who was looking at Ahmed for a longer period of time, if they're rostering him in season-long leagues.
By the way, did you know his first name is not pronounced that way? How it
Savon?
Looks either?
It's not.
Yeah,
Savon.
I found that
Savon.
out, Mike. I was looking up the Ahmed because I'm like, is it really Ahmed? And I looked it up.
By the way,
like,
is it Ahmed or Ahmed? Does anybody know? Can anybody confirm this?
The enunciation is on the Ak, and the Von it's Savon is the enunciations on the Von.
Savon Ahmed. Is
Yes.
that right? Yeah? Nailed it? All right,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
I don't know. But I agree. It was something where it took us all a while to figure it out because neither name is pronounced in the way it looks. But yeah, I think we've got it now. So that's good. I don't mind him as a play. I'm not that concerned about Matt Breida. If Matt Breida even suits up, like I will see him suit up when I see him suit up and not before I will.
I'll throw it out here because none of us brought his name up, but Kalen Ballage.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
he does. Put it this way. After that first game, I said, I can't get the old Kalen Ballage out of my mind, so I don't trust him yet, that being last week. Now, I've been kind of bringing this up on my podcast and saying, like, if you strip the name off the jersey and you just said, who is that running back? You'd be like, wow, he looks pretty impressive. I'm buying in.
Yeah.
At 56, so against the Jets, tougher matchup than I would say Denver is.
Right.
So that's why I brought up Ahmed, because I have Ballage and Ahmed very, very close in my season-long rankings. That's why it's like to take the discount to go down to 4,800 for Ahmed kind of makes some sense for me.
Right. And on FanDuel, it's a little different because they're basically priced at the same point. Ballage is 58. Ahmed is 56. I have Ballage enough spots higher in my rankings this week that it's worth it for me to go to Ballage. But yeah, this is crazy. And again, I'm more than happy to rag on Adam Gase for the obvious reasons. But legitimately, it's just strange because, as I said, we have seen Ballage do the thing where he ducks out of the way of a target that's coming at him. Like, that's not Adam Gase. So I don't know why he's playing so effectively other than just anybody who leaves Adam Gase necessarily improves in every skill set possible. But yeah, I do like him, Jake, this week, certainly on FanDuel especially. All right, let's get to wide receiver here. Give me a cash game value play, Jake.
I'm going for discount Terry McLaurin, as I've been calling him over the entire year, because Jamison Crowder is Terry McLaurin. Jamison Crowder is the number one in volume. He's the number one on a questionable offense. He's the number one with a questionable quarterback. He's the number one. It's just injuries have also derailed part of his season. Otherwise, I think people would consider him just like they consider Terry McLaurin at this point. So I know it's not as a favorable matchup as it has been in some weeks, but also Terry McLaurin and Jamison Crowder alike can get away from the outside. That's where Perriman's going to play anyway, and Denzel Mims. And I understand the risk of going with Joe Flacco at quarterback because you might get Joe Flacco looking incompetent. You might get Joe Flacco pulling a Kirk Cousins and throwing 4 interceptions. But again, I'm just going for the number one volume at 6,100 for that kind of. He's the number one, and he's going to see double-digit targets.
Well, is there? I do just want to ask, because I have gotten some questions from people more in season long. I mean, his game back, he only saw 2 targets in that game. Now he didn't play a full complement of snaps, so
but that's why he's second game back now.
That's what you're thinking, right? That he was just eased into that because he didn't play. Okay, good, very good. All right, how about you, Tag? So A, what do you think about Crowder? B, give me your cash game value play.
I love Crowder at 6,100, especially knowing that Desmond King's not on the team anymore. That the slot is cleared up. We talked about on the Start Sit show. I have him ranked as a top 24 wide receiver this week, so I have zero issue with playing him at 6,100 if you can get there. I think Amari Cooper is someone that I would play at 5,400. I know that no one wants to feel good about that and they're sexy about it, whatever, but the guy sees targets, right? So Minnesota, this is all you need to know. The Vikings have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, but have seen the 4th fewest targets to wide receivers. When you break it down on a per target basis, they allow 2.2 PPR points per target. That's the most in the NFL by far. The Cowboys offense is built around their wide receivers. Amari Cooper hasn't suffered too much without Dak. I mean, he's lost some of that touchdown upside, sure, but he's still getting targeted. He's still one of the better route runners in the NFL. And I also don't think that we should just sacrifice Andy Dalton to say that he's the worst quarterback in the NFL because he had one bad game against Washington. I'm unwilling to do that. So Amari Cooper at 5,400 feels like too good of a value to pass up.
So I want to ask Jake about this specifically because he was on my list, but not on FanDuel because he's 6,900 on FanDuel, and there's just no way I'm going to pay that. But he did kind of stick out to me at 5,400, Jake, on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think that this situation is intriguing, but I could see the Cooper. I could also see a case being made for Lamb, who had one more target than Cooper did in that game against Arizona for Andy Dalton's start. So I think either intriguing. I mean, you also have people out there painting a narrative, which is really true, about that Andy Dalton likes Michael Gallup, and it's not, he doesn't like him any more than any of the other wide receivers. But the appeal of Gallup is that he's got the most air yards per target until Ben DiNucci and Gilbert came in at quarterback, and then it went to crap. So I think any of them are intriguing. One of them is going to have at least a usable game. If you want to go with Amari Cooper as the number one, I'm not going to say you're crazy to do so. If you want to go with Lamb, I'm not going to say you're crazy either. Somebody's going to have some value, and it might even be two. I'm with you, Tags. I keep saying this. We're throwing away Andy Dalton's entire career off one game.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Jake, any other cash game value plays that stuck out to you this week?
I mean, he doesn't really feel like a cash to some people, but I'll say he is 100% the cash play that I love. I don't even want to give him away because he's 5,900. But the only question with him, and you might know when I say this, is he just has to be 100% the entire game. Stop getting hurt mid-game. Diontae Johnson, when he's 100% and plays the entire game 100%, he is the number one volume hog, just like McLaurin and just like Jamison Crowder, and he's 5,900 against Jacksonville.
Tags?
Love Diontae Johnson. Yep. I really do. I brought up Cooper just because I felt like he was a little bit cheaper, but I mean, what's funny is the receivers I had on my values here were Jamison Crowder, Diontae Johnson, Tyler Boyd, Amari Cooper, and Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I was going to bring up. I literally was trying to figure out between those. And I think some people are going to be saying, all right, what if I have to go really cheap? Like sub 4K? Who am I looking at? The player that I'd probably consider is KJ Hamler at 36. 10 targets in each of the last 2 games. We know that Miami they have studs on the perimeter in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. So Nick Needham is the slot cornerback. He's the weakest link there. And Hamler has taken over the primary slot receiver role while Jerry Jeudy's on the perimeter. So if you're looking for a dirt cheap wide receiver in cash, KJ Hamler at 3,600 makes some sense.
Does it matter to you if Drew Lock starts or it's Brett Rippon?
I'd probably prefer Lock just because I think the team would probably throw a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it matters because I think they're still going to be throwing the ball quite a bit.
Unless they ruin his day, and then what happens? I mean, Drew Lock can't cut his hair too; it's already too short.
Yeah, good call. All right, very good. Let's go to quarterback here. Who's a cash game value play at quarterback, Jake? Is
the obvious choice not Jameis Winston? I mean, I guess you guys can tell me if there's some pushback on why you just don't go straight to Jameis Winston, because I understand the Taysom Hill argument. I understand that Winston's on a different team, and there wasn't a touchdown in the start. Look. Jameis Winston is more aggressive, but that's also a good thing potentially for everybody involved. Michael Thomas, maybe we even get a second wide receiver that's relevant again for the Saints. And the throwing motions, apparently part of what's been worked over, including the LASIK. I just throw the narrative out there. You're getting Jameis Winston at 5,900 against the Falcons at home with everybody healthy for the Saints. This feels way too obvious to me.
Tags, what do you think about Winston as a cash game value?
Yeah, if I were going to save at the quarterback position this week, it would be Winston. I don't really like too many players down that range, to be honest, because I think there's going to be some higher scoring quarterbacks up. Honestly, when you look at Lamar Jackson, Herbert, Roethlisberger has a chance to go off. Watson does if they get the plays there. And if Jameis is going off, Matt Ryan's going off. So it's like I think you need a ceiling at quarterback this week. So they're taking on some of that risk with Jameis to get some of the upside, because Atlanta, by the way, I don't think people realize it, how good they are on the ground. They have a lot of the fewest fantasy points on the ground to running backs this year. So Kamara's going to have his role through the air, but I don't think Kamara and Latavius Murray are going to get done a whole lot on the ground. So they're going to have to rely on Winston a little bit. So at 5,900, if you want to save a quarterback, he's definitely the one I would go down to.
Awesome. So this sounds like a sit Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara podcast. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you tuned in.
And Davante
all right. No, I think we're all and Davante Adams, right? Don't forget Aaron Rodgers as well. Just avoid anybody who's remotely competent at fantasy football. All right, let's get to tight end, because I agree with you. Jameis was the guy who was sort of leading the way on the list. He's the obvious name. Let's go to tight end. If you're saving money here in cash game as a value play, who are you looking at the position, Jake?
Yeah, I think that honestly, when you're talking about some of the best plays being at 4,000, that's enough of a savings for me. But if you want to go cheaper and you don't want Hawkinson at 42 and you want to save almost 1,000, I'm going to go pick on the Bengals, which I've been picking on a lot this year. Jonnu, as mentioned on other shows a lot of times, is Jonnu. My biggest concern of him this year has been when Corey Davis and A.J. Brown's healthy. It's a low-volume passing attack, and he's third. So I'm throwing that game out against the Bengals. That's why I bring that up, because a lot of people are annoyed that Jonnu didn't do anything against the Bengals. But the Bengals have been susceptible a lot. Actually, before the Jonnu game, I think there was something like 5 touchdowns in 3 games to tight ends or something ridiculous like that. And the volume is there, 6'6", 4. He's got 3+ receptions. It's 40 to 60 yards. It's tight end. If you're getting me 50 yards and 3 catches, I'm hoping you score a touchdown, but that's actually going to probably 3 catches and 50 yards probably puts you inside the top 12 every single week at this point.
Yeah.
All right, Tags.
Dallas Goedert. Against Cleveland, they've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. Dallas Goedert has been playing all the snaps. I know he left the game shortly last week because of that didn't check for concussion, and it led to Richard Rodgers getting some production. But at 3,800, against a team that has allowed a lot of production to tight ends, against the Eagles offense, who definitely wants to target their tight ends, I like Goddard at 38.
Yeah, he ran a route on pretty much nonstop when he was in there. He's just on FanDuel, he's too much for me at 5,800, but I like the discount that you can get on DraftKings. All right, before we move on, guys, you know that we're giving away a signed Alvin Kamara Saints helmet right now, right? Well, that helmet comes from Pristine Auction, the only place you need to go for signed sports memorabilia. You want a signed helmet yourself? They're all on there. An autographed jersey, hundreds and hundreds, like the Jerry Jeudy signed jersey that went for $51 yesterday. Signed cleats, photos, cards, whatever. Thousands of auctions daily. Thousands. For every one of them, free to check out, free to bid on. You only pay money when you win an item. And it goes way beyond football, right? I mean, any sport, historical items, cinematic, art, legitimately anything. But if it's just football, again, thousands of auctions every single day. My favorite part of the whole thing is the ability to monitor everything really, really easily. Like, for example, say I'm in the market for a signed jersey. Okay, now I don't want to get 6 signed jerseys. I want 1. So I'm going to bid on 1. But I'm going to keep these other 5 that I'm eyeing on my watch list. So if I get a text alert from Pristine Auction that I've been outbid, like I have my settings ready to do, then I just go to my watch list and I see where the prices are on all the items that I'm watching. That way I can make sure I'm in on every item, but I'm only going to walk away with 1. Though with the prices, frankly, if I got all 6, I just wouldn't be that broken up about it. Just go to pristineauction.com, see for yourself. That's PRISTINE auction.com. You want $5 in free credits? Use our code FANTASYPROS in the registration field when you sign up, so they'll know we sent you. Again, that's pristineauction.com. Use our code FANTASYPROS. Okay, let's go to GPP here. Let's get crazy. Let's start with RB. Go ahead. Jake, start us off at a running back for GPPs.
So I'm going to bring up a running back that I told people if your trade deadline hasn't passed and you want to buy low, this is potentially your last opportunity, because if this person comes this week and scores actually just 100 yards and a touchdown, has that kind of day, people are going to be like, Zeke is back. He's back. It was a blip. He's fine. He's top 10 running back. There's the potential. There's Minnesota. If you're going to lean on trying to beat anybody, you're going to try and lean on Zeke some. You got Andy Dalton, who we were just talking about before. We're not throwing him away his entire career. I have this feeling, there's no basis for it. You guys probably have talked about this before too. For analyzing football for 10 to 15 years, sometimes you just get like, hey, this just feels like a scenario where Dallas comes out of their bye and fixes a lot of things. I'm not saying their offensive line can be fixed by just having a bye. But again, it's still Zeke. And I know he was inefficient this year, but at this price, when have you ever seen Zeke at this price? I guess that's even the bigger question.
I don't know if we ever have.
Right. Legitimately. I mean, he's what, 6,500 on
65.
DraftKings? Yeah,
He's
nuts.
He's cheaper than a second part of a backfield than Kareem Hunt, $200 more.
Right. No, I like the call. How about you, Tags? What do you think about Zeke as a GPP play?
I dig that call, man. I definitely like it. Mine is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is someone I'm not playing in cash, but in tournaments, I'm definitely going to have some exposure. The Ravens, not only are they without Calais Campbell, but Brandon Williams is seemingly not going to play in this game. So that's two of their best interior linemen. Last year on 474 snaps without Brandon Williams, this Ravens defense allowed 5.3 yards per carry. The last time Henry played against the Ravens, which was in the playoffs last year when everyone knew it was coming, he crushed them. 195 yards on 30 carries. I like Derrick Henry quite a bit this week. Again, you can't play him in cash just because he's just not involved in the passing game, and for whatever reason, he can't get it done. But in tournaments, Henry has that 150 rushing yard, 2 touchdown upside.
Yeah, I think especially last year we saw just how really the absence of Brandon Williams, and I agree with you, I'm not expecting him to play this week, that how big of a difference that made with the rushing defense for the Ravens. So yeah, I like the call as a GPP play. Let's go to wide receiver here, Jake. How do you give me a wide receiver GPP play?
There's two that I like. I kind of wanted to go to Brandon Cooks, but I'm going to go to somebody that's been extremely disappointing, and it's Tag's quarterback play with Lamar Jackson. Hollywood Brown is any given week 25 points. It just really hasn't happened this year. There's a lot of arguments. I'm sure everybody out there have seen them. The opportunity share on the team, the opportunity share of air yards, the opportunity, he's getting opportunities, but my pushback in seasonal is how can you even start him right now? Because I don't care how many opportunities you get if you're not capitalizing. But if you told me he gets 5 catches, just 5 catches this week, 120 yards and a touchdown, it's probably coming with it in this matchup. Oh, by the way, in the matchup, who just gave up a rookie coming off an injury, second game back, 100 yards, and Michael Pittman with the Titans. So I think Marquise Brown, if you want to gamble this week, this is kind of the week to do it. Otherwise, I don't know how you do. If he doesn't show up this week, I don't even know how you touch him the rest of the year.
Yeah, what do you think about Hollywood, Tex?
I think he's overpriced.
But see, that's why I like him in a tournament, because people are going to stay away from him.
Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've been there with Marquise Brown, and I've done it enough times this year to where I think you're going to get him. You're continually seeing that ownership drop and drop and drop, because so many people are saying, you know what, it's screwed me more oftentimes than it's helped me. But again, you've almost if you haven't played him to this point, you've all that's gone. I mean, none of that matters. And the Titans have allowed tons and tons of production to wide receivers. So it's not the worst call. I just wish they would have priced him down a little bit. Even 5K instead of 58, because there's some good plays in his range.
All right. How about you, Tags, though? Do you have a GPP play?
I am going back to Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated because I played a lot of Michael Thomas last week and it crushed me. It was bad, but against Atlanta, you throw the ball. That's what you do. Wide receivers, just I'm not even going to get into this because I'm just going to lose my mind about Michael Thomas last week. But at 7,300, people are, when they pay up for that much, they're probably going to go with some of these more pricey options. Guys like Keenan Allen, they're probably going to play Terry McLaurin, maybe even Julio Jones if Calvin Ridley misses the game. Davante Adams is obviously going to be popular if he's active. So Michael Thomas is in that price range where he's overpriced in terms of what he's been targeted this year, and it's going to lead to lesser ownership. And I'm down with that in a tournament.
Jake, what do you think about him as a GPP play?
I'm on him as well. It's the same exact thing. I've used a lot of them last week, and I think part of it just might be Michael Thomas, similar to Saquon Barkley last year, and players we've seen before, is couple games to get back into the flow. Might have also still been a little less than 100% in that first game back for that injury that seemed to linger forever, longer than we expected, similar to Joe Mixon's situation. So I do like Michael Thomas a lot. If you're going to play Jameis Winston, I don't know how you just don't attach him to Michael Thomas in every single league, because you're already getting savings, and then you're getting another one similar to Zeke. When have we seen Michael Thomas down to low 7,000s?
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the thing is we haven't projected for sub 5% ownership.
Yeah. All right. I love it. Let's go to quarterback GPP play. Go ahead, Jake.
This is about as GPP as you can get because he's also one of the cheapest. But if you told me a quarterback's thrown 300, 390 yards, Alex Smith, and doesn't have touchdowns to go with it, I'm a complete agreement with you, Tags, and my concern is the Washington defense being part of the reason that this doesn't hit. But just if, let's say Joe Burrow does hit, for all the people that are on Burrow and say, like, maybe he does still get his 35 to 40 attempts, well, then we're talking about more attempts for Washington. Again, this is, you're when you pay GPP and you're going to this level, you have to create your story. So I'm creating a story where this becomes a surprisingly contested game where both teams are scoring 25, 30 points. And in that case, if Alex Smith is going to do what he's done the past 2 weeks against Cincinnati and throw that many times and 300 plus yards, I would bet that now he's going to have 2 touchdowns. Like, to throw for almost 700 yards and not have but 1 touchdown, that's absurd.
How about you, Tags?
I will say Eric Ebron, and I say that because I like Ebron. He's been getting targeted.
Tags.
What?
We're talking about quarterback. We're on quarterback.
Oh, crap.
We're on quarterback, which, by the way, makes me feel like you weren't even listening to Jake's very
Alex Smith.
insightful
He was saying
analysis.
Alex Smith, and I thought, for whatever reason, I thought he was working towards Logan Thomas. But
No.
he talked about him in
I
cash,
as well.
so I'm done.
the
Forget everything
worst.
I said.
Well, how about your quarterback GPP play? I will introduce it better next time, Tags.
So I'm
you
going to
know
go on the
exactly.
other side of that ball, and I'm going to say Joe Burrow at 5,500. That team doesn't run the ball a whole lot. Washington is not used to facing a whole lot of pass attempts. Teams have typically tried to run the ball against them. And sure, they're going to get to Burrow. They're going to sack him. Who gives a crap? If he's throwing 40-plus pass attempts and this game is a shootout like Jake's talking about, Burrow has shown the ability to get it done. So I like Joe Burrow.
Okay, I like that. So, Jake, I realize I have to be a little clearer here after that Tags error. Jake, we will be talking about the tight end position now, going right now, tight end position for your GPP
The
play.
worst.
Tight end. Go ahead, Jake.
Jonathan Taylor. No,
He's serious.
so, I'm going to go right back to the Michael Thomas, Jameis Winston. I hate Jared Cook in seasonal. For years, I don't think I've ever owned Jared Cook because my biggest problem with Jared Cook is you can't predict his good games. You can't predict his bad games. He's matchup independent. He's matchup neutral. He'll show up against bad teams and do nothing, and then he'll show up against great teams, bad matchups, and go off. He's just Jared Cook. But against Atlanta, it is a bad matchup. It's actually the best tight end matchup on this week's schedule of games. And Jared Cook at 4,100. We know Jared Cook can do 60 yards and a touchdown any given week, matchup or not, but this is actually a good matchup to go with it. So actually, that probably means he's going to go 0.
All right, Tags tight end GPP. What do you got?
This time I'm actually going to get it right and say Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron has been seeing plenty of targets. He's one of the most consistent targeted tight ends. But everybody's like in the Steelers passing game is going to get cannibalized at some point. And last week it was Eric Ebron. This week it could be Juju Smith-Schuster. It could be Chase Claypool. And that means the other 3 guys are going off. And that could mean a big game for Eric Ebron. So you don't play him in cash. And that's why it's really difficult to play any of the Steelers wide receivers in cash because they're starting to price them up a little bit, except for Diontae Johnson for whatever reason. But Eric Ebron at 4K, I like him in tournaments.
All right, let's get to DST. Jake, who are you looking to play this week?
Yeah, the Steelers seem obvious, but 4,600. That's just, wow, that does so many bad things to try to construct the lineup. So I'll give you 2. We keep talking about Washington, Cincinnati. So on the flip side, if things go wrong and Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow from the past couple of weeks where he's starting to make some more mistakes and this goes sideways, especially because Washington is still one of the best at getting after the quarterback, I think Washington's intriguing. And to pay up, I'll go to Dolphins, whether or not it's Locke. Locke has been making plenty of mistakes on their own right, and Dags brought that up earlier about how their secondary is really good and can get turnovers. And I mean, just a few weeks ago, we saw they were the best defense because they had, 2 touchdowns, I think, in that one game? But, I mean, that's an aggressive defense that I don't think people realize, and that's why they're priced as high as they are.
Yeah, Dolphins at 3,400 on DraftKings, Washington at 2,900. How about you, Tags? Who are you looking at this week?
I'm going straight YOLO with my lower cost defense. I'm going to play the Falcons against Jameis.
Wow.
I mean, Jameis could put up points. That's fine. He could do that. But I mean, the Falcons defense has played better under Raheem Morris. And this just comes down to Jameis Winston being, well, Jameis Winston. That's what we did last year, right? You could play Jameis Winston in tournaments and play the defense on the other side of the ball, and you could still walk away profitable.
Right. Yeah. By the way, Jake, this is just what Tags does. He insists
cheap defense.
Very cheap at DST, no matter what, and he talks himself into some play, no matter what it is. All right, let's get
just
to our...
just a play that doesn't make you want to throw up is all. That's all.
I guess the Falcons fall into that. I don't know. It's borderline. All right, let's get to our stack of the week and lock of the week. Go ahead, Jake, with your stack of the week.
Stack of the week. We keep talking about the Saints. I'm not going to use them just because I want to also usually get a fourth in there, and I don't know who the fourth would be. Like if it's Kamara, and then I just don't see the pricing for it. So I'm gonna start with where we started the show, full circle. Deshaun Watson. I'm going Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks. This feels like one of those games. The opportunities have been there. Deshaun Watson has done it before with them, and you get both of them just a few weeks ago. Actually, I think it was 2 weeks in a row, wasn't it? But both of them hitting 100 yards and a touchdown. Deshaun Watson throwing for 300, potentially even running some on top of it. I love that trio this week.
Yeah, I like the call. How about you, Tag? Stack of the week.
I'm going to go with first up, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews combo, able to be done. Andrews is cheaper, and then throw in Derrick Henry on the other side of that. I like it.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to the lock of the week. Who are you just getting in there, Jake? You feel good about? Who's your lock of the week?
I mean, go back to Mike Davis it would be the lock. So if I'll throw out a name that we never even touched on and come back around to, I got to go Miles Sanders against Cleveland. I think Miles Sanders, for the excitement that we had before Boston Scott started taking over when he got hurt and then came back in this first game and wasn't exactly the usage, but also the Giants have been a better defense than people realize because of the perception around the Giants just as a whole. And their run defense is actually better than their secondary because their secondary has James Bradbury and a bunch of nobodies. So I think Miles Sanders is this is going to be the week where everybody's like, shoot, I should have traded for Miles Sanders. I should have put him in my lineup. Miles Sanders is going to be back to Miles Sanders this week.
How about you, Tags?
So Miles Sanders is very interesting. Like his price is up there, which is like, but but I would say is like to monitor. And Cleveland, again, they're reporting some weather conditions. So we don't know much about that, but that would obviously factor into Miles Sanders and give him like a lot more value. So dig it.
When did Cleveland move to the North Pole?
Yeah, what is this? This is preposterous. Wait, is this wind again though, Tags? Because I heard rain. I didn't hear the wind yet.
I don't know if it's wind, but I just heard there's a storm coming in.
Live checking for you right now. Showers likely. Chance of rain, 60%. Highs in the lower 50s. Doesn't look like even a wind concern yet. So he might be okay.
If there's rain, you never know. Carson Wentz may do some crazy stuff where he takes like an 80-yard sack or something.
Right now, wind is 10 to 12 miles an hour.
All right.
That's not
I'll
bad.
take it.
That's not
all right. Sorry, Tag. So go ahead. Who's your lock of the week then?
Keenan Allen. 7,400, play him.
By the way, I will say that legitimately, as we are, guys know I'm a Jets fan. It looks like every Jets corner. Yeah, it's true. Every Jets cornerback is out. Brian Poole is on IR.
Will we tell
Les
the difference?
Austin is probably out. Yes, now you can really attack that secondary, guys. I'm telling you. With Les Austin has a neck issue. Poole is on IR. They cut Pierre Desir. So I'm going to reiterate my Justin Herbert.
Oh, I love the Keenan Allen too because he's the Chargers 1 and 2 wide receiver.
Right. All right. That's it, Jake. Well done. Thank you for coming on. Remind everybody where they can find all of you and your great work.
They can go over to The Athletic. It's still a ridiculously low price to sign up for everybody. They just click on any of the articles and you'll get the huge discount, like $1 or something like that. I don't even know what's going on. But at All In Kid, I tweet everything out. You guys know this. They probably have muted me already if you haven't.
Thank you to Pristine Auction. Don't just take my word for it. Go to pristineauction.com. Thousands of auctions every single day. Go to pristineauction.com. That's PRISTINE auction.com. Thanks also to Omaha Steaks. Go to omahasteaks.com. Type in Fantasy Pros in the search bar. You will get 4 free burgers and a free digital meat thermometer. Don't forget to try their Deluxe Grillers assortment. Give yourself the gift you deserve this holiday season. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down every game for the Week 11 slate. Looking for useful content, fantasy-relevant information, and the data that's going to help your team win? Then go ahead and subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. And while you're at it, give us a follow over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Fantasy Pros so you can dominate all your leagues.